The Strait of Hormuz, 10:14 a.m. Saturday. The MV Celestial Mariner was a 274-meter crude oil tanker registered in the Marshall Islands, carrying 1.9 million barrels of Saudi crude from Ras Tanura to Rotterdam. It had transited the Strait of Hormuz 41 times in the preceding 3 years. Its master had logged the route so many times that the radar overlay of the strait's shipping lanes was familiar as a commute. At 10:14 a.m., as the vessel was clearing the northern edge of the strait's traffic separation scheme and entering the Gulf of Oman, 3 IRGC Navy fast patrol vessels emerged from the shadow of Abu Musa Island at high speed and moved to intercept positions on the tanker's port, starboard, and stern quarters simultaneously. The intercept was not a spontaneous act. It had been coordinated from the IRGC Navy Command Center at Bandar Abbas for 11 days. Time to exploit 3 conditions the IRGC's maritime intelligence staff had identified as a genuine operational window. First, the MV Celestial Mariner was carrying cargo owned by a Saudi state enterprise. The IRGC's legal pretext was a disputed maritime boundary claim that Iranian lawyers had been preparing paperwork for since the previous month. Second, the nearest U.S. Navy surface combatant, the guided missile destroyer USS Farragut, was conducting a routine transit 22 miles to the southwest, outside what the IRGC's planners had calculated as its response radius for a boarding operation that would be over before a helicopter could reach the scene. Third, the U.S. diplomatic environment following a collapsed nuclear negotiation framework meant, in the IRGC's assessment, that Washington would prioritize a negotiated resolution over a military response. The Beirut calculation again. A different form. The same underlying assumption. The IRGC fast patrol vessels came alongside at 10:14 a.m. Armed boarding teams transferred to the tanker's deck via ladders and ropes. The tanker's master issued a distress call on Channel 16 at 10:16 a.m. The call reached the USS Farragut's bridge at 10:16 a.m., the same minute it was transmitted. The Farragut's commanding officer had the bridge and was already tracking the 3 fast patrol vessel contacts on his combat system display. He had been tracking them for 9 minutes, since they first separated from their anchorage position near Abu Musa Island, at an acceleration profile inconsistent with routine patrol movement, a track geometry that his operations team had analyzed and categorized as deliberate intercept positioning rather than transit. He had flagged the movement to 5th Fleet at 10:08 a.m. with an assessment that read, 3 IRGC patrol vessels, probable intercept posture. Recommend elevated watch on MV Celestial Mariner. The flag had been received. The watch had been elevated. At 10:16 a.m., the USS Farragut's commanding officer received verbal orders from 5th Fleet to respond to the distress call and protect the vessel. The orders were consistent with standing maritime law. A surface combatant responding to a vessel in distress in international waters was not an act of war. It was an obligation under the law of the sea. The Farragut accelerated to flank speed at 10:17 a.m. and turned northeast toward the tanker's last known position. The Farragut's MH-60R helicopter was on the flight deck at Ready 5 status. At 10:17 a.m., it transitioned to Ready 1. In the IRGC Command Center at Bandar Abbas, the boarding operation was proceeding on schedule. The boarding team's radio operator reported tanker control established at 10:19 a.m. The tanker's master and crew were being directed to the vessel's common areas. The IRGC's plan called for the tanker to be redirected to Iranian territorial waters within 40 minutes. Once inside the 12-mile limit, the calculus for a military response would shift decisively. International maritime law creates ambiguity around vessels in territorial waters. The IRGC's legal team had built the entire operation around that ambiguity. The plan required 40 minutes. The USS Farragut was 22 miles away at 10:14 a.m. At flank speed, approximately 32 knots, The Farragut could cover 22 miles in approximately 41 minutes. The mathematics appeared to favor the IRGC's timeline. What the mathematics did not account for was the MH-60R helicopter, which had a cruise speed of 150 knots and could cover 22 miles in 8 minutes and 48 seconds. The MH-60R launched from the Farragut at 10:18 a.m., 2 minutes after the distress call. Its crew consisted of a pilot, a co-pilot, a naval air crewman, and a rescue swimmer. The helicopter was not armed with anti-ship weapons. It was equipped with an M240 door gun and the crew's personal weapons. It was not flying to the tanker to engage the IRGC boarding team. It was flying to establish visual presence, transmit live sensor feed to the Farragut and Fifth Fleet, and ensure that the situation on the tanker's deck was fully documented and transmitted before any other decision was made. In 11 minutes and 40 seconds, the helicopter would be overhead the tanker. The boarding team would know they were being watched. The IRGC command center would know the response timeline had compressed below their model. The carrier strike group operating in the northern Arabian Sea had been monitoring the IRGC fast patrol vessel movements since 10:08 a.m., when the Farragut's initial flag to Fifth Fleet had propagated through the Cooperative Engagement Capability Network. The carrier's flag bridge had elevated its air wing alert posture at 10:11 a.m. 2 FA-18F. Super Hornets were at Ready 5 on the catapults by 10:15 a.m. The carrier was 340 miles from the Strait of Hormuz, a flight time of approximately 32 minutes for an FA-18F at military power. The carrier was not the first response. It was the framework within which the first response operated. At 10:22 a.m., 8 minutes after the boarding began, the IRGC command center at Bandar Abbas received its first indication that the timeline wasn't proceeding as modeled. The MH-60R's approach had been detected by the fast patrol vessel's radar. The patrol vessel commander reported the helicopter contact to Bandar Abbas at 10:22 a.m. and requested guidance. The guidance from Bandar Abbas: continue the operation. The helicopter is unarmed. Maintain boarding team control of the tanker. Redirect the vessel toward Iranian waters. The patrol vessel commander complied. At 10:26 a.m., the MH-60R reached the tanker's position and began orbiting at 200 feet. Its sensor package, a forward-looking infrared camera and a maritime surveillance radar, was transmitting live feed to the Farragut, to Fifth Fleet headquarters at Manama, and to CENTCOM at MacDill Air Force Base simultaneously. The imagery showed 3 IRGC fast patrol vessels alongside a 274-meter tanker, armed personnel visible on the tanker's main deck, and the tanker's heading shifting toward the northwest, toward Iranian territorial waters. The imagery was unambiguous. The transmission was recorded. The legal and operational documentation of what was occurring existed in real time across 3 command levels before the tanker had moved 4 miles from its point of intercept. At 10:27 a.m., Fifth Fleet issued the operational authorization that the Farragut's commanding officer had been waiting for: non-permissive recovery authorization. This was not a declaration of hostilities. It was a specific authority to employ proportional measures to secure the release of a detained vessel in international waters, an authority grounded in maritime law that had been pre-planned, pre-briefed, and pre-authorized for exactly this scenario type. The Farragut's commanding officer acknowledged at 10:27 a.m. At 10:28 a.m., the Farragut was 14 miles from the tanker and closing. The MH-60R, still orbiting overhead, transmitted a radio call on Channel 16 and the IRGC Navy emergency frequency. The boarding party was directed to withdraw from the vessel immediately and return to their patrol craft. The call was transmitted in English and Farsi. The IRGC patrol vessel commander reported the transmission to Bandar Abbas and again requested guidance. The guidance from Bandar Abbas: maintain position. The Americans will not act. Continue redirecting the vessel. At 10:29 a.m., 2 FA-18F. Super Hornets from the carrier air wing reached the Strait's airspace after their 32-minute transit at military power. They descended to 3,000 feet and established a holding pattern over the tanker's position. They were visible from the tanker's deck and from the IRGC patrol vessels. They were equipped with AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles and AIM-120D AMRAAM air-to-air missiles. They were not yet authorized to engage. They were authorized to be seen. Their presence transmitted a message that did not require words. The decision window for the IRGC was narrowing. The IRGC Command Center at Bandar Abbas registered the F/A-18F contacts on coastal radar at 10:29 a.m. The senior IRGC Navy commander present at the command center made a decision at 10:31 a.m. that would define the operation's outcome. He directed the fast patrol vessel group to accelerate the tanker's redirection toward Iranian waters and ordered coastal missile batteries at Keshem Island to active standby, a defensive posture that he intended as a deterrent signal to the approaching Farragut. The coastal batteries that came to active standby included 2 Noor anti-ship missile launchers, each carrying 4 missiles with a range of 170 kilometers. The Noor battery activation at Keshem Island was detected by the Farragut's AN/SPY-1D radar at 10:31 a.m. The moment the battery's fire control radar transitioned from standby to active search mode, the Farragut's combat system automatically classified the Noor battery as a live threat and generated an engagement solution. The commanding officer did not yet authorize engagement. He reported the battery activation to 5th Fleet at 10:31 a.m. At 10:32 a.m., 5th Fleet authorized the Farragut's commanding officer to engage the Noor battery if it transitioned from search mode to targeting mode. The distinction was operational and legal. A radar in search mode was looking. A radar in targeting mode was preparing to fire. The legal significance of that distinction had been briefed to every commanding officer in 5th Fleet's area of responsibility as part of their theater orientation. A battery that was looking created no imminent threat. A battery that was acquiring a firing solution created a right of self-defense response under international law. The Farragut's electronic warfare team was monitoring the Noor battery's radar emissions in real time, their frequency analysis software distinguishing between the search mode emission pattern and the targeting mode pattern that preceded a launch sequence. The difference in the waveform was 4.3 milliseconds of pulse repetition interval. The electronic warfare operator, who had been monitoring the battery since 10:31 a.m., had spent 14 months learning what 4.3 milliseconds looked like. At 10:33 a.m., he recognized it. At 10:33 a.m., the Noor battery's fire control radar transitioned from search mode to targeting mode. The electronic warfare operator reported the transition at 10:33 a.m. The Farragut's commanding officer authorized engagement at 10:33 a.m. 2 AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles launched from one of the F/A-18Fs overhead at 10:33 a.m. targeted at the Noor battery's active fire control radar. The HARM seeker locks on active radar emissions and follows them to their source. Flight time from the F/A-18F's position to the Keshem Island battery: 41 seconds. Both HARMs impacted the Noor battery's radar infrastructure at 10:34 a.m. The battery's fire control radar ceased transmitting. The Noor launchers were physically intact. They were operationally blind. An anti-ship missile battery without a functioning fire control radar is a logistics asset, not a weapons system. The IRGC Command Center at Bandar Abbas registered the loss of the Keshem battery's radar contact at 10:34 a.m. The senior commander who had authorized the battery's activation now faced a situation his planning had not modeled. The Americans had responded within 3 minutes of the battery going to targeting mode. Not within hours. Not after a diplomatic exchange. Within 3 minutes. His boarding team was still on the tanker. The Farragut was now 11 miles away and closing. The FA-18Fs overhead had just demonstrated both the capability and the willingness to engage Iranian military infrastructure. The 40-minute window he had calculated was now irrelevant. The operation had approximately 7 minutes before the Farragut would be within small boat engagement range of the fast patrol vessels. At 10:35 a.m., the IRGC Command Center directed the boarding team to withdraw from the tanker. The order reached the patrol vessel commander at 10:36 a.m. The boarding team began its withdrawal from the tanker's deck at 10:37 a.m. By 10:39 a.m., all boarding team personnel had returned to the fast patrol vessels. The 3 patrol craft separated from the tanker at 10:39 a.m. and accelerated toward Iranian coastal waters at maximum speed. The Farragut arrived at the tanker's position at 10:42 a.m., 26 minutes after the distress call and 28 minutes after the boarding began. The MH-60R had maintained continuous overhead presence throughout. A medical team from the Farragut was transferred to the tanker by small boat at 10:44 a.m. to assess the crew. The tanker's crew was physically unharmed. The master reported that the boarding team had been professional in the sense that no physical harm had been inflicted on the crew, but that the boarding team had disabled the tanker's communication systems after the Channel 16 distress call, a detail that would appear in the subsequent incident report and in the UN Security Council's consideration of the event 3 days later. The tanker resumed its original course at 10:51 a.m., escorted by the Farragut until it was 80 miles into the Gulf of Oman. The carrier air wing maintained combat air patrol coverage over the strait for the following 6 hours. The response, in purely temporal terms, had lasted 37 minutes from first distress call to boarding team withdrawal. The Noor battery engagement had lasted 41 seconds from harm launch to radar neutralization. The total U.S. munitions expenditure in the engagement: 2 AGM-88 HARM missiles at approximately $284,000 each, totaling $568,000. The total IRGC investment in the operation: 11 days of planning, 3 fast patrol vessels, a boarding team of approximately 20 personnel, the political cost of an internationally documented maritime incident, and a Noor anti-ship battery, whose fire control radar was now non-functional and would require replacement components that were subject to international sanctions. The IRGC Command Center at Bandar Abbas had modeled a 40-minute operation that would place a vessel in Iranian territorial waters before a U.S. response could reach it. The actual timeline: 8 minutes for the MH-60R to establish overhead presence, 15 minutes for the F/A-18FS to arrive from the carrier, 18 minutes from distress call to the Noor battery's radar neutralization, and 23 minutes from the battery engagement to full boarding team withdrawal. The model had been wrong at every interval. The IRGC operation had been built on 3 assumptions: that the Farragut was too far away to respond in time, that the helicopter was unarmed and therefore irrelevant, and that the Americans would not engage Iranian military infrastructure in response to a maritime boarding operation. The first assumption had ignored the helicopter's response timeline. The second had misunderstood what an unarmed surveillance platform accomplishes: not combat effect, but documentation, presence, and compression of the adversary's decision window. The third had been refuted at 10:34 a.m., when 41 seconds separated a targeting radar transition from its neutralization. The UN Security Council convened an emergency session 48 hours later. The live sensor feed from the MH-60R's 11-minute overhead record had been shared with all 5 permanent members before the session opened. The feed showed armed personnel boarding an internationally registered vessel in international waters. It showed the vessel's heading being redirected under armed compulsion toward a territorial boundary that would have changed the legal calculus of the entire situation had it been crossed. It showed the moment the IRGC's coastal battery transitioned to targeting mode, its timing relative to the Farragut's approach visible to any analyst who watched the feed with a clock. and it showed the 41 seconds between the harm's launch and the battery's radar going dark. The record required no interpretation. It did not receive any that improved upon the imagery itself. 3 of the 5 permanent members submitted formal statements. 2 abstained from comment. The resolution that emerged from the session referenced international maritime law 17 times in 4 pages. The IRGC Navy's fast patrol vessel group that had conducted the operation returned to Bandar Abbas. The 3 commanders filed their after-action reports. The reports documented the operation's objectives, its timeline, and the point at which the withdrawal order was received. They did not document a strategic success. They documented a 37-minute operation that had resulted in 0 objectives achieved, 1 radar system non-functional, an internationally distributed video record of the boarding, and a demonstrated U.S. response timeline that was 42% faster than the IRGC's planning model had projected. The tanker reached Rotterdam 19 days later. Its master filed a formal maritime incident report with the International Maritime Organization. The report was 43 pages. The relevant operational summary occupied 2 paragraphs. The remaining 41 pages documented the legal basis for the response, the timeline of the engagement, and the specific provisions of international maritime law that had governed each decision, from the distress call to the final escort separation. The legal record was as complete as the sensor record. Both had been built in the 11 minutes and 40 seconds between the MH-60R's launch and its arrival overhead. Time from distress call to MH-60R on station, 11 minutes, 40 seconds. Time from distress call to FA-18F arrival, 31 minutes. Time from Noor battery radar activation to neutralization, 3 minutes from authorization, 41 seconds from launch. Time from distress call to full boarding team withdrawal, 37 minutes. Total U.S. munitions expenditure, $568,000. IRGC objectives achieved, 0 of 3. The Strait of Hormuz carries approximately 20% of the world's oil supply through a channel 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Every tanker that transits it passes through a geography that the IRGC has treated as a zone of leverage since 1988. A narrow, controllable space where the presence of fast patrol vessels and coastal missile batteries translates geographic proximity into strategic influence. The IRGC had conducted 14 documented maritime harassment operations in the Strait in the preceding 6 years. Each one had produced a diplomatic response measured in days and weeks, not seconds and minutes. The assumption embedded in those 14 operations that the response cost to the U.S. would exceed the operational gain from intervention had informed every planning cycle the IRGC Navy's Maritime Operations Branch had conducted since 2016. At 10:34 a.m. on a Saturday morning, the response cost was $568,000 and 41 seconds. The operational gain to the IRGC was 0. The assumption had not survived contact with a Farragut-class destroyer, a single helicopter, and 2 Super Hornets flying at military power from a carrier 340 miles away. The mathematics of the Strait of Hormuz had not changed. The response timeline had simply been demonstrated at a resolution the IRGC's planning staff had not previously factored into their model. The model would need revision. The strait would remain open. Those 2 facts were related. They had been related for 37 minutes on a Saturday morning. The relationship was now documented, transmitted, and archived in 3 command systems and 1 International Maritime Organization report. It required no further elaboration.